right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar series. This is the first in a four-part series here, AI with the Friday Institute, from Insight to Innovation in Higher Education. We are very excited that you are able to join us this afternoon. We will be recording the session and we'll make it available on our website where you registered either this week, next week, excuse me, or the week after Thanksgiving holiday break, so that if you aren't able to stay for the whole session, or for folks that aren't able to join, you'll have access to that recording at a later date. I am pleased to join you from the Friday Institute. It is part of the College of Education at NC State, and it's a really special place where we do research, policy, and practice. And we see that those things are very interconnected, and they support and serve the K-12 learning space, higher ed, and adults as well. So as long as it's a learner involved, we are interested in working with those individuals, really understanding how people think and the impact on student learning. So I'm Emma Broughton. I am the Director of Digital Learning here, and I have the pleasure of working with a fabulous colleague across the way, Laura Fogel. So Laura, if you want to introduce yourself for us.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm Laura Fogel. I'm the director of the Media and Education Technology Resource Center, which is the library for the College of Education.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And so Laura will be helping to facilitate our chat and sharing links. So if you haven't popped that open, you'll find there will be some helpful information for you this afternoon that you can navigate and learn. So as we get started, I want to share a little bit about how we are conceiving of AI at the Friday Institute. And at large, really, our goal is to empower educators, those people who are working with learners. We want to offer those hands-on guidance opportunities that foster AI literacy. We really lead with that AI literacy piece. We're trying to understand, how do we first understand, how do we evaluate, and how do we use AI in our spaces? And we know that there is the power and the potential to transform teaching and learning. So in this four-part series, where you are today is our stepping into AI. We're thinking about it from the very beginning, the fundamentals. We'll be sharing a little bit about what AI is and how it works, and give you a chance to think about AI and understand it more, so that in session 2, we can begin to navigate and evaluate the AI maze. We'll embrace the now in session 3 and look at and think about student learning. And then in session 4, leading the way, we really are hoping that you might volunteer to explain how you might be a champion of AI in your space as well. So more opportunity to come as far as those separate sessions will be concerned. You're welcome to attend any or all of them, but we are excited about offering this series to you. As I said, this is our first session stepping into AI, and we really believe that there is power in artificial intelligence when it is unlocked in safe, responsible, and ethical ways. And so during our session today, we're going to be thinking about what is the potential for AI in higher education, how we can begin your journey to AI fluency, AI literacy. And then we're going to ask you at the end of our session to set a goal for continued learning around AI in education. So just to get started, we need to think about, well, what does AI do? Generally, we're hearing a lot of conversation right now about the generative AI. And in its basic form, Gen AI and other AI tools are going to be collecting a massive amount of data. You'll hear about data mining, hear about data privacy. We'll be talking a lot about the data that's collected, especially in our second session when we talk about evaluating the AI tool, because what data is collected and the bias that it might have, it really matters in the output that we get from those AI tools. So once all of that data has been collected by that platform, that tool, that company, that AI is going to, that machine is going to analyze that data for patterns, and it's going to look to see where those patterns exist. It's going to run the algorithm so that the output can be the predictions. And I'm going to be saying over and over again as I talk about AI, machine, machine, machine. This is not a human. This does not have human intelligence. It makes machine errors. in those predictions. And so another way to think about this is an input layer and an output layer. And so on the left-hand side of the screen, when we talk about what does AI do, the biometric data, the activity, all of that input there on the left-hand side goes into this black box. There's all of these different pieces, these hidden layers that exist. This is where we have to really trust, and we're asking for transparency from these different vendors that we're working with, because what comes out the other side, that output layer, is that prediction. And so what you should find in the chat here is a link to the AI literacy framework from Digital Promise. They're great partners and collaborators out of California, have put together a fabulous framework document to explain a lot more about AI and what it does and how it functions. But at its basic level, it's data in, lots of things happening in the middle in that black box, and then data out, that output layer at the end. But what's so different about AI in the last 2 years for us is thinking about the accessibility of a tool that can build on previous learning, a tool that also can adapt based on the input that it receives, and then also a tool that can create some novel content. And that's pretty interesting because so much of the time, that type of machine learning, that type of output hasn't been accessible to the everyday person. And so with Gen AI, the accessibility of that, the affordability of that is really part of what we have seen explode over the last 2 years in our spaces. One of the things I'm mindful of is how to think about all of this work around AI. So the next few slides, we're going to be addressing what are some of those rumors that are in our space around AI. And the first one that comes up is, well, AI might just be trendy. Is it just this passing fad? What is it actually? And so what I believe we're experiencing right now aligns really well with Gartner's hype cycle. And so there's that technology trigger, which happened in November of 2022, when we had the launch of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and now all of these other large language models that have come on the scene. And everybody got really excited about them. There was a peak of inflated expectations. And depending on where you are, depending on what's going on, you might still be living in that peak of inflated expectations. We've got these high ambitions for what AI could possibly do in our space. But a lot of people have also entered this trough of disillusionment where they think and they realize, is it really all that it's hyped up to be? Can it really do all of these things? What's exciting about the potential and the power of AI is there is the opportunity for us to reach that slope of enlightenment with Gen AI, where we can really settle in and we can think about what is the power here? What is the transformation that can come? And then we'll get to a space where, with time, that plateau of productivity. So we're going to hear a lot about various things that are hyped up and people get very excited about them. When I go to conferences and I see vendors and ed tech folks that are on the vendor floor, I'll even see people who are dressed up in sequin jackets and they are hype, 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 all about AI. Realizing we have to go through this cycle in order for us to get to that true place of enlightenment and productivity. And so what we hope through this series is that you'll be able to move through that cycle with us into a place where you can find efficiency and other benefits, but also transformation along the way. I also want to flag straight out of the gate that there are a lot of ethical concerns and fears that exist. So you heard me talk about machine errors a couple of minutes ago. There's also a concern about intellectual property and copyright. We've got folks that are engaged in lawsuits right now because of music that has been fed into the AI system or algorithm, or the New York Times has been very concerned about all of their property, their IP that's been put into an AI system, and they don't have any control or power over it. We also recognize that AI has bias, especially against members of the BIPOC communities. Our data is also constantly being mined, no matter where you go or what you might be doing online or engaging with these different platforms, that data is being collected. I also have concerns about the cost of this when we're thinking about the digital divide and people who have access or people who don't. A lot of these platforms offer a freemium model where it might be free to get you hooked, and then it's going to cost you in the long run in order to continue to use their platform. We also know, especially in the headlines, that there's some challenges for a lot of people to understand the difference between reality and AI. It can be hard, sometimes impossible. And one of the recent headlines that we've seen in the last month related to Character AI, platform that allows people to engage with a chatbot, is a young teenager ended up harming himself and committing suicide because of his interaction with that platform. It is being blamed. And so, especially as we're thinking about young folks coming up and engaging with AI, what is safe and responsible, and how do they understand the difference between what is real and what is AI? And then to mention the younger generation, especially when I do presentations about AI and concerns that might exist, I hear almost every time from those folks about their concern over environmental impacts. We know that it takes a great amount of energy in order to run these systems, in order to store this data, and there is an environmental impact, especially when those are placed in those servers and those farms are placed in locations that are already being negatively impacted right now. I'll also caution folks that we should approach AI with a do no harm type of mentality. So from incorrect plagiarism detection to weapon creation, there is a wide spectrum, a wide continuum of the harm that could be caused because of the AI use. And so we'll especially be digging into that with our second session about evaluating AI. But it would be important for me, it's important for me to mention these various cautions and concerns that people have, because these are realities for us as we are educators, we're working in this space, we are embracing this emerging technology, but we want to be safe and responsible and ethical along the way. I noticed that Laura also dropped into the chat a link to a spreadsheet. That's a spreadsheet I often share with folks because it provides a lot of news headlines about AI ethics and policy. So I'd encourage you to check out that spreadsheet and see what's being written about, what's happening in the news media around these various topics. You can click on the different tabs at the bottom of that spreadsheet to be able to access those different articles and explore. I find it really interesting to see what's happening out there, especially from that curated resource. All in one place is sometimes a lot easier than going to a lot of different news organizations. Another rumor that we hear a lot is that there's the potential that AI will replace us. AI might replace teachers. And so in South Austin last year, we heard about a private school in the news that was using an adaptive AI to optimize learning. But really what that meant was they were replacing all of their certified staff with an AI product that instead was going to be the direct facilitation with students, and they would have aides or assistants, some adults in the room, but not serving as their primary teacher. And we saw that again in this news headline from India that this was being piloted in a school there as well. It's going to be really interesting as those test scores emerge, as students' experiences emerge in the research, to understand what the impact of that is. Over and over again, what I continue to see reinforced, however, is that keeping the teacher in the loop, the human in the loop, the side-by-side work with the educator and the student using that technology tool, that AI tool, is where we're seeing the best impact on student and on learners. And so the greatest gains are actually when it's a side-by-side, teacher and human in the loop, rather than a direct replacement of the adult in that space. The other thing that we hear about, another rumor we hear, is that AI can't be trusted. So if you take a look at the image there in the middle of the screen of that musician, Izzy from Hawaii, I think you might remember him singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow with his ukulele. He passed away a number of years ago, but what Google shared with us about a year ago now was that most of the images from Google image search of this musician were fake. And so if you look at the image pool that is circled there, those are not real pictures of him. And there's concern then about how many of these pictures that we see online aren't real. How can we tell the difference between them? We can't really trust then even a Google image search to provide us with the legitimate pictures. Or there's concern about how people will be using AI. So on the right-hand side of my screen, finance worker in Korea, South Korea, paid out $25 million. There was a deep fake video call that he received from someone he thought was the chief financial officer, and he transferred all of that money out of their account into the fraud account. And that was a pretty big deal when $25 million is gone from that company. And so it's pretty astonishing to think about how accessible and easy it is for these bad actors to do these types of things. And so it's going to be more and more a serious issue for us to be on the watch for this, as their ability to phish and to cause harm just is going to be, it just is going to increase over time. Another thing that we realize we're hearing about, is this a rumor? I would say this one is true. Students are using AI. So if you take a look at this post, I found it really interesting. This exercise that this faculty member did with a group that he was working with, he offered students amnesty if they admitted to using ChatGPT on their assignments at the end of the semester. And so within a day or so, you can actually see from 3:10 is the timestamp from this email to 8:30, 8:29. So within a 5-hour window, 23 of his 25 students replied that, yes, they were using ChatGPT. We're seeing that reinforced over and over again, that our students are using this platform. It is happening. And so how do we address that with them? What does that look like? How do we support them? How do we empower them? And how do we caution them about what that looks like as well? I would say that it's hard for students to know when to use AI, especially when they're getting different and confusing answers or responses from the adults that they work with. I just want to play this quick video here because this is another example of syllabi policies for AI in classrooms. And so there's an individual who's collecting all of these examples of what different educators have put on their syllabus. And it is 60 some pages of different things that folks are telling students about how they can use AI in their classrooms. That's really confusing and concerning. When I walk into this space, I am allowed to use AI. I am encouraged to use it. I'm taught how to use it. I walk into another space and the language that I hear is it's cheating and I'm not allowed to use it anymore. And so it's one of those things that it's really important for us to wrap our minds, our arms around it and figure out what we believe and understand about this type of a platform, and then how we can engage with it ourselves in our spaces. Along those same lines, we hear a lot about student cheating and trying to detect when students are using AI. I'll flag for you on the left-hand side this article about GPT detectors. More and more, we're hearing that these types of things are biased against students. Here's a research article that came out last year that, in fact, for non-native English speakers or non-native English writers, there was a higher degree of bias against these students by these GPT detectors. And so if we go back to that phrase of AI should do no harm, here is a way that it might be causing harm against these students when it's detecting or it's reporting that these students are using AI when they really might not be. There's a case that's out there right now that was in October published in a lot of our news articles. You might have seen it in various places, that parents are currently suing a school district in Massachusetts because a teacher used an AI detection platform to determine if students were using AI in their classroom. And one student was accused of using it, and the students say, no way, they were not. And it's not clear policy or rules about using AI. And so that is the basis of their lawsuit against this school district. And so it's going to be more and more widespread. We're going to hear stories about this. where parents and students are getting involved in this process and in the policy around AI and how it can be used and should be used in our education spaces. I want to stop here for a minute because one of the things that's important to call out is that detection piece and how accurate that detection piece can be. A lot of times we're worried about the text being detected by AI that people might copy and paste and submit as their own work. But I think here are two really great examples of why it might be hard and challenging for these AI detectors to actually work. And so I think in the chat, Laura is going to drop in the links to these two to these two games that we can play. The first one being the New York Times Faces, detecting whether a face here is made by AI or not. So Laura, I'm going to quiz you. I'm going to ask you to test yourself as you look at these faces. Was this a face that was made by AI, or do you think this one's real?
So I think there's something weird about his left eye. So I think this one's AI generated.
All right, let's see. This is a real person, Laura. I think you got one right. All right, what about this one? Do you think this one's real?
So that one looks like it's real to me.
It's AI. So, Laura, I'm sorry. It's
Oh for 2.
Let's try one more. What about this kid? Real or AI?
AI.
No,
Yeah.
this is a real person. So there are a couple more faces that we could play with, but I want to move on to the Google game as well. If you haven't played this game yet, it is there in your webinar chat. You can access that. If you have a school account, you should be able to access that for free. Let's play this odd one out. The way that this one works is that Google Arts and Culture produces 4 pictures for you on a certain subject area, and you have to find the AI generated image. So you'll maybe have 4 chances, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Tell me which of these pictures is AI generated. So if it'll load here.
While it's loading, I was just going to share the New York Times also had an AI. Can you tell whether it was written by AI or a 4th grader that I've played with my classes before? It's really interesting. That's a fun one to try too.
All right, here we go. Which one is AI generated? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
I think it's 3.
Okay, I think it's 3 because of you're right, because of how strange those letters look on that keyboard. I'm going to click and it'll tell me a little bit more about each of these other types of keyboards. Let's try one more. Which one of these is AI generated? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Move 4 looks very strange.
No, another one? 2.
Okay.
Oh, it was 2. That was just a wild guess. I don't really know why, unless maybe this weirdness here, this haziness here with the image possibility. All right, we'll do it real fast. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which of these bathtubs might be AI generated?
1, what is that?
Oh, no, no, it was that third one that we missed. So just as hard as it is for us to detect it in images, it can be just that hard to detect it in essays and text as well. Something interesting that I read recently, I hadn't heard about before a couple of weeks ago, was that there were some professors who, maybe Laura, you've heard of this, some professors who have included some non sequitur text in their written assignment. But the non sequitur text was in white font, white color. And so when a student went and copied and pasted the assignment from the syllabus or from Moodle or whatever learning management system and pasted it into ChatGPT, that white text would show up and it would tell ChatGPT to talk about flamingos or something totally random and non sequitur. And so if it showed up in the paper, then folks would know as they were reading it, this is probably a platform, or this has probably been in ChatGPT.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
Yes. We've got a question or a comment here from Mark Light in the chat. Thank you, Mark, for sharing. We'll put that into the webinar chat for everyone if you're not able to see the Q&A, to be able to show how deepfakes can be created using people's likeness. Love that. Thank you for sharing that resource with folks. So, want to think about then, what does that look like in our spaces, our learning spaces? So I'm sharing with you 3 slides here of what NC State has written for developing an AI syllabus statement. So we have a most restrictive example of what could be included in someone's syllabus. This is about the use of AI tools in the most restricted kinds of way. So how would you explain this to students? It's one thing to have it in your syllabus, but it's another thing to talk to students about it. I think, go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, to me, if this is your stance, this one really says, like, I do not want you to use them in any way, right? They're off limits.
Right. That's right. So let me ask you a follow-up question to that then. What about something like Grammarly?
Right. I mean, it is a text. Technically, I would say text, it is a text generator. So it could potentially fall into this category. I think, right, it'd be important to articulate that with your students about what your expectations are there.
Right. And that's the tricky space, is that so many of our digital tools now are embedding some type of AI into their service, that it's hard to distinguish and say yes or no to AI when it's already a built-in feature. And so when you're using something like Grammarly or some of these other platforms, Microsoft has an AI tool, Google does as well. It's hard to be able to know, how do I turn off that AI feature if I can at all? And does it fall into this type of restriction where this professor or person has said, absolutely no AI, it is academic dishonesty for you to do that. The next type of restriction or guidance around an AI syllabus could be related to something that's moderately restrictive. So there is some permission allowed here. How would you explain this type of guidance?
Right, that AI can be a assistant or a partner with you, but that you shouldn't take anything wholesale from what AI generates and submit that as your own work.
Right. Great. Thank you. And what about the least restrictive one? So this is kind of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, most restrictive, moderately, and least restrictive. What's the right fit? How would you explain this one?
So this is the approach that I took in a course that I was teaching this semester, where I encouraged students really and told them that they were empowered to use AI tools. I did include in it that they needed to document when they used those tools. But it really is opening the door and encouraging students to take advantage of those services. But I think it's right. It's important to talk about what you intend by the that phrase in an ethical and responsible manner, maybe putting a little bit more detail around that for your students so that they're clear what you mean.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I still think all 3 of these really require some type of conversation with your students. I saw that, Laura, you dropped the link in the chat for NC State's guidance on developing those syllabus statements. I appreciate that resource for folks. There's a lot more language attached to those 3 different levels for you to check out there. And if your own organization or university has that type of guidance, I definitely suggest that you check that out and talk to the folks that maybe have developed that to better understand what is meant by that, and maybe some supports for how you'd explain and work with students in that way. This graphic here, I think, is really helpful as I have thought about this spectrum or this continuum of what is students cheating. What does that mean? What does that look like? And so this was an item that was created for the K-12 space, but I think it makes a lot of sense when we're talking about how do we operationalize or actualize this in our classrooms at the university level too, where at the very bottom of this graphic, where it says it's student created, that student has made the entire product. They have written the assignment without consulting AI or even the internet, all the way up to bot created, where the student has plugged their prompt into AI, they copied their response, and they submitted it to a teacher. And when I'm leading a workshop and I share this graphic, I oftentimes will ask the room, okay, which of these counts as cheating? And we'll go through and we'll have folks raise their hand when we get to the point where they think, okay, that does sound like cheating or plagiarism, until everybody in the room raises their hand. But it's an interesting activity, especially when I work with a group of faculty or teachers, because so often the hands go up at different times. Even in the room of faculty and adults, educators, there's not agreement yet about which of these counts as plagiarism and cheating. And so I would highly encourage, if you haven't checked this out, I think we have a link for this. Yep, there we go in the chat now. To have a conversation with your team or with your colleagues about what do we consider cheating here, and which of these is relevant to our students' future, and which of these would you use? So in your own practice, if you replace student with my own work and said, well, I consulted the internet and AI for ideas, is that okay for me? Is it okay for my students? What does that mean and what does that look like? I think it's really important for us to consider. And then when we get to some further resources, the item here on the left-hand side is this stoplight effect. This was actually something that was published in the Department of Public Instruction's guidance on AI, where they were thinking about a continuum for empowered learning. So in this stoplight effect, you see, should this assignment specifically be AI-free, AI-assisted, AI-enhanced, or AI-empowered? Laura, do you have any comments about this graphic? Have you used this before with our pre-service teachers?
Yeah, so I've talked with pre-service teachers about it, and I think as we were talking about the syllabus idea, it was really choosing one of these as the overarching uh, level for a whole course. But I think this is an interesting idea to think about it more on a more granular level of 4 particular activities, and thinking about, well, this activity, right, might be okay to use AI, be AI empowered, and then this one to be AI free. So I've challenged our pre-service teachers to think about different activities that they feel like would go in these different categories to really push them a little bit beyond thinking about, I'm just going to take an overall stance to what activities lend themselves to being in one of these categories.
Right. Yeah, right. So what I love about this is that it does give us an opportunity to talk about unit by unit or project, assignment by assignment, to think about what is the expectation, to have that conversation kind of anchored in a structure here that hopefully would be easier for folks to understand around what the expectation is in this classroom for this specific assignment. I also appreciate the piece there in the bullets at the end of each, bottom of each of those different sections about the disclosure of how you used AI. And so if you were to look up almost all of our citation options, MLA, APA, Chicago, they all now have included something related to citing AI in papers, in products. And so it's something that can be reinforced and encouraged in student work as well. Then we have this item on the right-hand side that was also something that was created by NC State for a guide for students on the ethical use of Gen AI. Sometimes they don't have a faculty member or a professor who might be having these conversations with them yet, or there's uncertainty here, but this could serve as a resource for them to be able to understand, do I have permission? How am I going to use AI? Is it my intention to learn or get a grade? What am I doing here? And kind of a decision tree in some ways to think about, am I an ethical user of this AI tool? And what does that look like? And so there's a link in the chat for you to be able to access that and explore that a little bit on your own. Maybe share it with folks too. What I appreciate about the graphic there on the left-hand side, that stoplight colored graphic, is that it is developed in Canva. So if you have a Canva account, you would be able to remix that and you could make that your own as well. So that's a nice feature of what they've been able to publish for us at DPI. The next piece that I think is important for us to think about too is the challenge of whether or not AI is actually transformative. We hear a lot of people talking about the value of AI is in the efficiency, the time that it gives us, the way that it automates things for us. And I believe that's true, but I also believe that's just the tip of the iceberg. I don't know that we've actually gotten to a place of true transformation yet with AI. I think some places, some classrooms, some students, that's happening. But I think the more education and professional learning and training that we're offering, the more that we can embed AI literacy for folks to understand, evaluate, and use AI, the more that we'll reach those transformations, the more those will be accessible for us. Those things that were previously inconceivable might still be inconceivable today, but I think technology is catching up with us up to that in a far faster rate than it ever has before. And I would encourage you to join us for sessions 2, 3, and 4 to hopefully hear about some of those efficiencies, but really to dig into some of those transformations that can happen in our space. So as we wrap up our time together this afternoon, I'd challenge us to think about, how do we want to step into AI? You've heard me say AI literacy several times. You've also heard me say, how do we understand, how do we evaluate, and how do we use? We're definitely going to be digging into our evaluate and our use in sessions 2, 3, and 4 of this webinar series. But I would encourage you, if you have some time, to really think about this as a way to approach this emerging technology and this tool. It is okay for us to move slow to go fast in the long run. Right now, we're at the stage where we really want to understand what the AI is and how the AI works, and whether or not I should be using this AI tool, and if it's appropriate, and what are my next steps for this, which moves us into that evaluation piece. So then I can think about, after I've evaluated this tool, can I really dig deep into the using of this tool? Is there actually value here? Or have I given away all of my data privacy to this tool? I often will hear some colleagues of mine that are technology leaders in various places, and they will say, you're paying in something when you are using a tool. If it's free, you're paying in all of your data when you use that tool. If you're paying with your money, but you also might be giving away some of your data too. So it really depends. And so that's why I feel like this 3-part AI literacy framework really is important. It's easy to remember, understand, evaluate, and use, but we'll be digging into more of the operational aspect of evaluate and use in the next parts of our webinar series. Laura, I saw that you dropped the link to the Digital Promise AI Literacy Framework into our chat. We won't have a chance to read that together today. It's very reader friendly though, so it's very readable. I would encourage you to take a look at that. I think it's got some excellent examples and guidance around the AI literacy framework that we've been talking about. I also wanted to flag for you, if you haven't taken a look yet, at the ChatGPT and Gen AI tools that are posted here on the teaching resource document, I could have, and I have created my own types of material that look like this, but I thought it'd be really helpful for folks to see it from NC State themselves. How do they break down these large language models that are available to us? And so it discusses each of them about their popularity, their access, whether it's paid or not, and provides you with a short description as well. I'm just scrolling through because I don't see that they've added Notebook LM to this list yet. That will be interesting to see what they have to say about that new tool that's just emerged in the last month or so. We'll be digging into some of these as we move into session 2. So if you're choosing to join us for the next session, I'd very much encourage you, if you haven't already, to play around with these a little bit. See how they work. Try some prompts after you've created your account, because we'll be giving you some time to play, some prompts to use and explore during that next session. And so as a preview to that, I think that next session is December 6th. I'd really encourage you to take a look at this site and dig into at least one of those large language models for your own practice and use. As we wrap up, then, I challenge you to develop your own AI fluency. What does that mean to be able to use AI and to approach it in a way that really matters and has meaning and impact on the work that you do, on the way that you instruct and lead in your classroom? And so thinking about, how do you set a personal professional goal for your next steps related to AI? Maybe you heard something today in our conversation or wanted to explore one of those rumors. Maybe you wanted to dig into some of those news articles or try out one of those large language models. I'd encourage you to post your commitment on a social media platform. Maybe you've made the jump to Blue Sky, or maybe you're on LinkedIn or one of the other platforms, but would encourage you to tag us using the hashtag AI with the FI. What might be your commitment to how you might step into AI yourself as a result of this session with us this afternoon? Our time is going really quickly. I know that we said we'd save a couple of minutes for questions and answers at the end of this webinar. If you haven't registered for Navigating the Maze, where we'll be evaluating AI for everyday applications, I would encourage you to take the time now to sign up for that webinar. That will be 2 Fridays from now, December 6th, at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Laura, if you want to drop that that link into the chat for folks to be able to sign up, feel free to reach out to either one of us at any time. We're happy to connect and talk about what's happening with AI, maybe help answer some of your questions, maybe be a cheerleader for any of the personal goals that you've set for yourself today, thinking about how you yourself could step into AI. I'm going to leave this open for just a couple of minutes to see if we've got any questions that might be good for the whole group, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.
Yeah, great to have you all. And thanks, Mark, for sharing your Mark Light for sharing your resource with us. And we hope that you all come back on December 6th to join us again. And yeah, if you have any questions, we'll happy to answer those now too. And I'll put our contact information back in the chat as well.
Thanks so much. So we did have a question about CEUs, Laura. Can you answer, are we offering CEUs for this series?
So through the, once we post them as recordings, we'll be able to manage the CEU process there.
Okay, great. So we'll follow up with an email to folks who've joined us and more information about that then.
Yes.
Great. Yes. So Heather, once the recording is posted, we will send out a follow-up email to everyone and make sure that you have the link. The recording will be posted on the same page where you registered for this session as well. So if you don't see the email or you wanted to check that website, that is where you'll find that recording. It will post to our Friday Institute YouTube channel. Awesome. We hope we will see you at the next session, December 6th, Navigating the Maze. Otherwise, hope you have a wonderful end to your November and have time to rest and enjoy the holiday with your friends and family. Stay tuned for more. Thank you so much, everybody.